Hello there guys, it's been a while since I've been live on YouTube. They've started a new feature, so I thought I would have a go with it. I would have a chat to you guys about some things that matter to me. And I've kind of just decided to do this, so I haven't even bombed the people that know that I'm going live. So probably nobody's going to know about this until it's done, but hey. So today I want to talk about shadow work and something that I haven't really talked about for a little while. I haven't really been doing a whole lot of videos on YouTube for a little while for a whole number of reasons, which I'm sure you guys know by now. But this is one that's kind of been mulling around my brain in terms of something to talk about, something to have a chat about. And this is shadows of individuality, of creating self, and the continuous process by which we as spiritual practitioners evolve our personalities, our individualities, our personas to some degree, and the problems that arise with this from self and authenticity that's kind of tied to it, and what that actually means, because we talk a lot about what it is to be authentic and what it is to us as individuals. It's been a while since we've been live. Individuals. And what does that mean? What are the problems with it? What are the things that arise when we're talking about individuality? We're living in times where the individual, I feel, is being squashed underfoot a little bit by the pressures of conformity. And this is something I've been talking about for a little while now, more on the blog posts, perhaps more than on videos. But I have touched on it here and there. We had the, We Are the Weirdos call to action video for that purpose, for that very reason. And I had said, I feel like there is this pressure to conform right now. And rather than do that, I'm going to double down and be weirder and stranger and more myself as much as I can be. And that involved playing with things like different aesthetics, such as the lovely painting on canvas behind me and wigs, and playing with all sorts of things about identity, just to have a feel about the impact that would have on the psychological and emotional change within me. Because I'd been feeling quite depressed with some of the trends that had been coming forth in the sort of online spiritual community. And some of it is my own shadow work to work through, for certain. But I know there are other people that are feeling this way. And there are key themes that I think keep coming up. One, there is this pressure to be a very certain kind of way on YouTube, and it's basically defining success by popularity, by numbers, by likes, by clicks, by the more money that's being made, and things of that nature. So
I'm guessing you're part.
I'm live.
Okay, I need to grab the back.
Okay. Why?
For some reason, I can't get access to my internet banking. It's like every time I put my details, it says it's wrong, but I haven't changed them in like over a year.
Well, that might be why all the post office was down today, because there was some kind of banking problem.
Yeah, well, TSB's been having issues for months, but it means that I need to go make sure that
Okay.
that money in my account is still there.
Okay. Apologies.
What in the shop on there?
No, just drinks maybe.
This is what daily life is like for us.
This is Darren, who can't not interrupt at any given point.
Stay true, stay awesome, stay in school, don't do drugs.
You're a black magician telling everybody not to do drugs. Okay.
I don't do drugs, I do psychedelics and stuff.
He doesn't do any of that, because all he needs is a cat, and he's away with the fairies. Anyway, apologies for that. We'll get back to the main bulk of the video. So there is this pressure to conform. There is this pressure to be a certain way in order to be popular on social media, which is a large outlet for most of us, because let's face it, it is a really useful tool when it comes to sharing our spirituality. It is a really beautiful method of connecting with people who we might not have otherwise been able to connect to. We can share elements of our spirituality, we can learn from each other, and we can see things that we might never have seen otherwise. And let us not forget that in its pure form, I guess, social media is a tool, and it's a beautiful one, and it allows all sorts of things. However, the problems with social media are very, very real. And I think one of my favorite phrases about social media and things in general is don't compare your behind the scenes to somebody else's on stage. And let's face it, social media is permanently on stage. It's permanently a facade. It's permanently best foot forward. It's permanently like the best photographs taken. It's permanently a very small snapshot of what life is like in all ways. And for the most part, most people are not sharing their kind of behind the scenes, more difficult, more problematic, less aesthetically pleasing elements of their life. They are conscious that there is an audience watching them. And I've been playing with this idea for a little while. I've been encouraging people to rock their weird. Chris and I encourage people to be, this is who we really are. This is when things look a mess. This is witchcraft on the go. This is not the staged version of what spirituality looks like. And there's nothing particularly wrong with really beautiful aesthetics, really interesting pictures. I personally prefer an aesthetic which is a little bit different. I prefer a darker Gothic aesthetic to like my witch altars and things, but I can still appreciate really beautiful posed photographs. I think the problem for me is that it was all becoming an amalgamation of one linear aesthetic. It was becoming the idea that this is how witches look and act and speak, and it was a really narrow perspective, and it was even bordering. Hi, Gremlin. It was even bordering on. I don't even know. It was almost bordering on offensive, because the only images that were like at the front of the media were quite young women. It's a wig. I'm playing with wigs at the minute. Thank you. And they were young white women from a very particular background, and I know it's been so long. I'm getting back into being live. So this aesthetic was, and it was kind of like the beauty blogger aesthetic is how I've described it, and I'm tentative with it because I don't want to get into bashing women, but like this, it was a very specific way of presenting what witches were, and it was young, kind of like festival makeup, white women, and they were thin and skinny and models. They were model-like, and it was a very particular background aesthetic with, salt lamps and the beauty. The thing about the backgrounds is the backgrounds reminded me of how beauty bloggers are supposed to set up. So they would have like a mirror with lights on behind them, and then they'd have, a Himalayan salt lamp behind them. And that's a very particular aesthetic that started in the beauty blogger community on YouTube and has kind of like eked its way into spirituality and witchcraft videos. And you do get the idea of having like books behind people and things like that. I'm talking about Shadows of Spirituality and how I feel that there was an influx of videos which are very much centered around one particular aesthetic. So the most popular witch videos on YouTube are very much based around this, and any documentaries featuring this are based around that. There are, of course, really amazing break the mold channels of people who talk about spirituality and witchcraft who do not fit a stereotype. The people who are out there who are truth dealing and living at large and being who they truly are. And it's always really fantastic to see that. And I always appreciate that on a lot of levels. And so for me, it was like I've been saying for a while, like, we need to rock our weird, we need to like really double down on who we are as individuals. And it's almost kind of being like an act of rebellion. It's almost gotten to the point where it feels like an act of rebellion to go outside of this way to succeed at YouTube or way to succeed at social media spirituality 101 with very particular video topics, with very particular aesthetics in the background, with very particular levels of depth, with very particular personality traits, almost like it has to be permanently on, it has to be permanently happy, it has to be permanently inviting, you have to be like switched on, happy, grinning and inviting. And I understand why it happens. It happens because YouTube has become a form of entertainment for a lot of people, very much television centric, and people, you know, gravitate towards people that they feel are having a happy, chirpy, cheerful life. And I get that, I understand that. But like, on the other hand, we're talking about spirituality. And whilst I can totally like get behind it when we're talking about makeup, because makeup is fun and frivolous and not, you know, necessary, and you can play with it or you don't have to, and you know, that is a little bit lighter. Spirituality for a lot of people is not only day-to-day life, but it's life-saving. And it's not something that I think can be trivialized and made smaller than it is and made more comfortable than it is. And I wouldn't want it to be. I wouldn't want spirituality to become a subject which doesn't address things that really matter, even if they're difficult, even if they don't look nice and pretty and they're not packaged in a certain way, even if the video goes over 10 minutes, which you're supposed to stick to like this 10-minute thing now, because otherwise you lose viewers. And I'm like, I'd rather have a conversation. I'd rather ramble a little bit. I'd rather sing in the middle of my videos and leave it on, because that's what I'm actually doing. I'd rather like leave the moments where I need a minute to breathe, pause and reflect on something, so you guys see that it's a human being having a conversation about these things, same as you guys. And to be honest, when it's very, very edited and very, very cut down, I think that we lose a little bit of individuality, and I don't want us to do that. I don't want us to get to the point where every presentation is so the same that we're not encouraging people to think for themselves. Goose Honk says, I almost never watch videos 10 minutes or below. I feel like nothing important really gets discussed with any nuance. Exactly. And I really enjoy YouTube videos, and that, you know, I've been watching less and less and less, because the people that I think really hit it out of the ballpark, I can just go straight to their channel and watch their videos. I prefer that. I prefer the nuance. I prefer the different perspectives. It's like how I feel like we don't always have to agree on every aspect of spirituality, and we can all come at spirituality from completely different places and learn something from each other. And I think that's great. So I'm going to read a couple of comments before I go forward. So Fire Paradox says, what you do is almost beyond the entertainment aspect. It's almost like a chat around the fire. So for me, I like to have a balance. I like to have my fun, daft, silly videos, which are literally about having a bit of fun with you guys. And that's why I have kept doing the spooky box unboxings, because I don't want everything to be like full serious all the time. And I think there's something to, you know, sometimes we should have a little fun, we should have a little frivolous, and that's great. And it's a good medicine. But like, when we're talking about things of spirituality that matter, it needs to be longer, it needs to be deeper, it needs to be in the thick of it. It needs to be showing that, you know, you can cry, you can scream, you can get mad, you can have a bad day, and it's not against the notion of spirituality, because there is like spiritual bypassing that happens in spirituality, where people are like, well, if you just were more positive, these negative things wouldn't be attracted to you. And people actually say this shit. People use spiritual ideas to make people feel guilty for their difficulties, for their shadows, for things that they go through. And so we need to have the conversations to combat shit like that, because I don't want people who are going through really tough times and have turned to spirituality to give them control or emotional stability or hope to come across just that, that spirituality is just happy people in 10-minute videos with salt bumps in the background, because that's not, I don't think it's helpful, particularly when they're in a difficult place. So Megan says, thank you for this topic. I've been thinking of it nonstop and it's a bit disheartening. It's becoming a mainstream thing. Yeah. And Fire Paradox says, those ideas are being used as a weapon almost. Hi, guys that are joining. Hi. If I miss you, hi. Thank you for joining me. It's been a while since we've been live and chatted about things. Yeah, there is a definite loaded gun when it comes to certain forms of spiritual talk, and it's really unfortunate, because if we actually tell people, not only are you welcome to come sit with us, not only are you welcome to cry your friggin' eyes out if you need to, not only are you welcome to have a bad day and be growly and be pissed off, I will still be here for you, even if you're not like happy cheer every day. That's important. I think that is really important. See you later, Emerald. And yes, we can pick people up and be cheerful and be happy and have a presentation of self which is chirpy and cheerful, and maybe that will make them laugh at some point. But we should also be having the conversations that matter, because that's what spirituality is for. I've cried a lot at the altar, Gremlin. I have screamed at the altar. I have, taken all my quote unquote ugly emotions to the altar in order to work through them and to own them, because owning ourselves, owning every emotion that we go through is real to me. That's truth. And that's what spirituality is about. It's about not only sort of empowering and emboldening the self, but better learning to understand the self, and being okay with who we are, and then seeking to, be the best version of ourselves, or however you see spirituality as a path sort of upwards and onwards. Megan says it takes so much growth and work to learn to live your authentic self. It does. And I feel like when we're in a sea of samey, we need to really drive home the message that it's okay for people to be unique and different, however that manifests. I'm not going to tell you that the only way to be unique and manifest is to be semi-gothic like I am, because that would be complete bull. It's whatever really speaks to you on a soul level. And individuality and creating an individuality can be really, really hard, because we're tempted to fall into traps. We're tempted to fall into the traps of looking outside of ourselves for what individual means and following what other people are doing with regards to their individuality. And I'm not talking about like little things. I mean, I really loved, I forgot what her name is. She's a song artist. I think it's ACRA. She does Panic Room. And I was looking at her videos and I was like, I need that kind of mint green wig to add to my ongoing wig collection. Now, wigs on the surface of it are very, they're a shallow thing. It's an aesthetic thing. It's not that important in terms of individuality, right? Well, this is actually to do with anxiety. This is to do with the fact that I had someone telling me that women weren't allowed to speak on these subjects, because that's always fun. So rather than get more masculine, which is a common reaction to that, I was like, right, fuck it, we'll get more feminine and carry on talking about it, because defiance is what I want people to really embrace and really connect to. Their inner defiance, that they are not going to be told to shut up. They're not going to be told to go silently into that long good night. They're not going to be told that their opinion doesn't matter. Now, tempered with knowledge and wisdom, right? Because I'm not one of these people who's like, yeah, you get to have an opinion and you can be an asshole. Like, no, you have to own and be responsible for yourself at the same time. And I would recommend backing up your spiritual assertions and assertions in general, with wisdom, with knowledge, with reading around, with grounding that in knowledge. I think that's really important, to know where you're coming from and what you're talking about. Keep deepening your knowledge base, I guess, is the easiest way of putting it. And then from that point, you can then strike out with confidence that, I have read into the folklore, I have read into the history, I've read into the modern day associations, I've read into the impact that this is having around the world. And then I can sit with all those different aspects and make an opinion, an informed opinion. Now, when it comes to individuality, you might want to be looking around what's out there already. This is something that I struggle with, because I know that there are a lot of people who lean very, very heavily on what other people have already done in order to shape themselves. And from that point, and whereas I understand the reasoning behind it, I also try and discourage it in people, because it's really disheartening when you basically rip someone off to the person who created that. And there is a lot of back and forth and arguments about individuality there. And there's nothing wrong with kind of like being inspired by someone, but I think you have to know the difference. You have to know the difference between those things and what that is and where the line is. And that's a very difficult thing to know sometimes. I'm going to read that, Gloom, because that's really appropriate. I had no autonomy in my physical appearance. When my dad died, the first thing I did was dye my hair. I feel you. It can mean the world. Yeah. Sometimes it's physical changes. Sometimes it's nothing to do with the physical, because we have to be careful to say that, individuality is not all about how we look. That's just the shell. So it has to come from the inside and kind of gravitate outwards, because otherwise it's not authentic. If we're looking outside of the self to change our outsides of selves, then we're not really changing anything, because we're not listening to our deep rooted selves. And I always think it's really interesting activity to go back to who you wanted to be as a kid, and you're like how you wanted to dress, and what you wanted to be, and how you wanted to talk, and how the things that interested you before people who were telling you, you can't do that. So go back to who that little inner child is on the inside, who's like, I want to wear wigs, and I want to have crazy outfits, and I really like the gothic aesthetic, but I want to mix it up with color. I want to go out there and I want to be this, and I want to go out there and I want to talk about that, and I get excited about this, that, and the other. So I'm going to talk about that, actually, Megan. That's important. So I wish I had the courage to be myself. Honestly, I think a lot of people get to a point where they say fuck it. And I think it's an age thing as well. I think you get to a certain age and you're just like, fuck it. And there is a day by day, step by step coming into being of self, though. And I think it's really important to note that we don't just change overnight into who we want to be, because, aesthetically, you can change overnight. You can cut your hair, dye your hair. That's one of the easiest ways of doing it. You can change the clothes you're wearing. But that, again, won't have the inner glow. It won't reflect you from the inside out. So honestly, it can be as simple as beginning to journal and then making very, very small changes and having small victories until they become healthier habits. So say it was just you really wanted to change the fact that you didn't speak up for yourself. And so you would document how you felt, and if you were panicky, and in how that would affect you, and the things that you really wanted to say. So then you would focus on what you really, really, really wanted to say, like what one of the most things that you wanted to speak out about was. And then you might put that into a phrase, and you might practice that phrase for a little while before you actually went out into the world and said that, especially if you have anxiety, or if you're very, very worried about it. So the practice can come first, and then you can speak about it out in the world and be like, okay, I've practiced my line. This matters to me. I'm going to put it out there. And the day that you do it, you should celebrate yourself for doing it. And even if it's just a line, and even if you can't keep the conversation going around it, you should still congratulate yourself for the first step, as long as you keep going. Because, you know, I love the quote that, you know, courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's just the voice at the end of the day that says quietly, keep going. Because I think we have an idea of what courage is as well. And that's not necessarily where we should be gravitating. Sometimes courage is just that little voice that tells us to keep going, keep pushing. You can do it. You're worthy. You can. You should. Celebrate yourself. Celebrate your weirdness, your uniqueness, the things that make you who you are. Good, bad, ugly, whatever. They don't have to fit a formula. And I think that's where a lot of this comes from. We think we have to fit a formula. Hi, Faith. I'm playing with the live aspect because I haven't done it for a while. So the courage to being who you truly are is just steps of acceptance. I think slowly accepting who you are. If you want to change something because you've always kind of forced yourself to be one way to fit in or whatever, then slowly begin to throw that out and slowly engage with the person that you want to be. And listen to that. Hi, Monique. Listen to that inner child that, hi Molly, wants to be crazy, you know, who wanted to be, because we've, you know, I think we all had that inner child that was like, I want to do this. And even if it's like just mixing foodstuffs or whatever, you know, I want to do that. I want to wear sparkles, or I want to wear black, or I want to go out there and have an adventure in the trees, or whatever it is. And you know, there are all sorts of things. And sometimes it's just getting back in touch with that and actually like living out something that we really wanted to do when we were kids. And I was a storyteller as a kid. I used to walk through the forest and just tell stories, just make them up as I was going. And my Nana used to be like, how on earth do you just walk through the forest and make up novels? And I was like, hey. Like, I just loved it. And so I try to remember that about myself to this day. And that was something that makes me who I am. And that's something else. So Jujube says, I know how you feel. I'm slowly rediscovering myself and I'm scared to tell my family who I really am. So acceptance from other people is a really difficult part of this process of individuality. But the thing is, the people who really love you. It's the Dr. Zeus quote that Chris always says, you know, the people who matter won't mind, and the people who mind don't matter. And I'm just talking about authenticity on Instagram. We're our fingers on the pulse. So people who really truly love you, even if they don't fully understand the things that you're going through, will support you. And I know it's a really scary idea that people who are your family might not support you through it. Trust me. I found out the hard way what happens when they don't. And the only family I have left of my blood relative is my sister and her baby boy and her fiance. But honestly, you come to a place where you can find the strength to be who you are unapologetically. And I'm not talking about being an arsehole, because that's something else. But being who you are unapologetically and not allowing people to tear you down and take pieces of you is part of the shadow of individuality, which is hard going, hard-earned, and takes time. And you might get to the point where it still affects you in weird ways years down the line. And that might sound depressing on the surface of it, but it's a long, ongoing process to reclaiming who you are. And who we are changes and evolves as well. Like, people don't talk about the fact that you're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to change who you are. You're allowed to grow past your bad habits and your mistakes. You're allowed to put those mistakes to bed in the garden of your being and grow roses from them. You know, you don't have to keep being who you used to be, and you don't have to keep punishing yourself for who you used to be if you truly are working towards change. So Mystic Art says, hey Joey, working on deep inner child hurts, chipping away at them. Thank you for this video. You're a beautiful insight and outlet. Thank you. And hey Joey, hey Joey, hey Joey, I tuned in, you know it's 3:30 a.m. in Z. New Zealand didn't fit. And you can't sleep. Well, I'm sorry you can't sleep, but thank you for joining me live. So you can come up against all kinds of problems when you're reclaiming individuality. Like, you don't want to be part of the group then. If you want to be an individual, you clearly don't like other people. Yes, this is something I've been told. And I'm like, no, I don't like other people. When people do that. Not right now, I don't. But honestly, you can be part of a group and be an individual as well. There doesn't need to be a separation. I think we get into these either or mentalities, like you're either a team player or you're an individual. You can't be both. It's like human beings are deeply complex, multifaceted beings, are capable of all sorts of things, but we can't manage to be both a team player and an individual. That's strange as anything to me. Christina, I started sharing my art on Facebook, and I recently shared a comic about Hell the Goddess. My Christian art commented that I should work on more positive messages. To me, Hell is super positive. You plan to use my art to let my pagan witch shine. Yeah, but Hell has an incredibly potent positive message. She accepts everyone. Like, and she, you know, those who've died in childbirth and kids that have died early, and you know, she accepts everyone. She has some really beautiful messages. She also has some really beautiful messages about challenging what beautiful is, which is perfect for given what we've been talking about. That's amazing, Kristen. You go, girl. And Purple Broom says, overcoming hurt by family can be the hardest. It can be. I think there is this prevailing dialogue which tells us that we should never give up on family and we should take whatever family dishes out. I think it's a really unfortunate thing that gets taught, and I think it's really counterintuitive. You know, if other people were treating you the way that sometimes that family treat you, you would never in a million years still be there. And this is how people get away with it. Little Blue, how do you find the divine masculine and interactions you've had with it? So it's not quite what we're talking about, but sure. In terms of individuality or in terms of spirituality in general, I consider the Morrigan to be both masculine and feminine. The first time she ever showed up in my life, she actually presented herself as being masculine. I don't think that the gods are as gender locked in as human beings need them to be. And I think the way that we view gender within spirituality is very much a reflection of how we are as people. Take Loki, for example. Some people have real issues with Loki because he's basically gender fluid and has been a female horse and gave birth. He's a mother. And, you know, that shapeshifter aspect to him is something that I found really, truly interesting when working with the divine masculine. Now, I conduit and channel all the time for different gods and goddesses. This is part of my job. And I never have any more difficulty now channeling masculine energies than in the beginning I did, because I'm a survivor, as you guys probably know. So in the beginning it was a little bit more difficult to me, but it can be deeply healing when you're ready to, working with the divine masculine. And so Hades was a big part of that. Coronanos has been a part of that, and Loki has been a part of that. Odin's been around a little bit. He's kind of hands off, but he's still around. He definitely is involved with people who I'm close to as well. So there's that. And yeah, there's been masculine elements of deity that have come through just as easily as divine feminine. Now, Hades was very, very insistent, as was Loki. And I think both of those two actually turned up in dreams, and me dreaming about gods and goddesses is somewhat unusual because I have a proactive meditative approach to connecting to divinity. So dreams doesn't usually have to happen. It can, and especially if I'm not picking up on messages, which I should be because of whatever reason. The deities are like, right, we'll show up in dreams then. But I think it can be just as enriching. And for many, many years, sorry, that was the computer freezing up. That for many, many years, I worked with the divine masculine and the divine feminine in abstract terms. So I just worked with God and goddess energy and didn't work with it in terms of specifics. So for me, it's just balance, and all things exist within each other anyway. Okay. Like the term ambivalent about liking people, but need a shit ton of alone time to recharge our own energy. That's so me, whether I like it or not. I get called selfish, but it's not. I can be like that too. Like sometimes I need my hermit time. That's what I call it. Like my birth date falls under the hermit, and they put them with tarot cards and things, with archetypes. Sometimes we just need that. There's nothing wrong with needing time to yourself. And even if it's like, whether it's out in nature or whether it's in the confines of your own home, sometimes we all need that TLC. There's nothing selfish about that. And honestly, it's really good for shadows of individuality, actually, to spend time with yourself, to get to know who you are when it's just you, when nobody's watching. That's who you are. Because no one's watching you, no one's judging you. You're free to be whoever you want to be. And in those moments, you can get a good gauge for who you are at that present moment. That's okay, little blue. I hope that was a helpful answer. And Pepper Jackie, have you ever worked with Pan? And ever hear anyone mention him too much? Not huge amounts. There's an element of Pan that kind of feeds into the Green Man for me. And there's an element of Pan which kind of feeds into like the Coronanos energy a little bit. So, but from a personal perspective, no. I haven't really worked with Pan. I haven't even really worked with Pan in terms of helping other people connect to that energy when people come to me for that, because no one's ever asked me. So I haven't, not really. I wonder if he's quite like Dionysus in terms of energy as well. That would be interesting. Dionysus is one that was a really interesting trip with the divine masculine. Hey, Mary. So sorry, that's not entirely helpful for me to say, but I haven't done a whole lot of work with Pan, and that's just the truth. So I think that's the best way to go about it. If you haven't really done a lot of work around it, just say that. I think that's that's kind of the best way. Just be truthful with it. If you haven't really done a lot of work with it, you haven't done a lot of work with it. So, are there any questions? We're approaching the 40-minute mark, so I've gone way over my allotted 10 minutes of what popular videos are supposed to be. Thank you guys for coming out and joining me, by the way. This is an incredible turnout considering I haven't done this for a very long time, and I basically just dropped it on everyone. I was just like, hi, I'm here. I've decided to do it live. If there aren't any questions, I'll just sum up. And I'll sum up anyway, and then if there are any questions at the end, I'll address them. But for me, individuality is honoring who you are on the inside. And this is why I mean, people know that I struggle when people take from other people and like replicate. I really don't like it, because I believe in elevation. I have said, and I keep saying, elevate, don't replicate. Oh, that's a good question, Little Blue. How do you find the experience of going with the A group whilst managing to keep your individuality? So group dynamics are difficult. You get a lot of like interplay between people. You get a lot of unfortunateness in a lot of groups. Once you find a group that really vibes with you, it can be a beautiful experience. We have a really beautiful group for podcasts with me and Chris, and the support energy in there is beautiful. And everyone just vibes, everyone just shares, everyone supports each other, and it's really great. And everyone is free to be themselves as an individual. And I think that's the key thing to note in groups. Are you free to have an opinion, even if it's not popular? In terms of group dynamics, I mean, not if you're like, abusing other people or like, I don't know, hating, that's something else. But like, if you don't do a particular magical thing the way that everyone else does, are you free to say that? Yeah, exactly, Molly. When you find a good tribe, they encourage you to be yourself. They honor who you are. They honor who you are as an individual. And it's kind of like a coming together of individual minds. Yeah, there is tons of individuality even within subculture. Make it your own. Exactly. So for group dynamics, I would just be wary of not being allowed to be who you are. Jujube says, how do you connect with male energy? I'm not sure, since a lot of males in my life until my husband have been abusive and scare me. Okay, so this is the first thing that helped me with that, is seeing that there is masculine within us as women and feminine within men as men. And this is doubly so true for deities. I think, honestly, gender as the way that we perceive gods and goddesses is more to do with how human beings need to define the universe than it is about deity. I think deity are happy to fit within what we need as little humans to understand big deity. And for me, it's remembering that masculine doesn't equate to abusive. And I understand how difficult this can be when you've been harmed by a male, but I will remind people like women are just as capable of really evil acts. It's true. So remember that there isn't a morality attached to gender. There is only a morality attached to action. Same thing that happens when you're struggling because you've been a victim of a crime at the hands of a certain kind of person, whatever that might be. You have to remember that morality, hi Denise, is attached to the actions of the individual, not the entirety of the gender or whatever it is. And, there are good men, there are not so good men. There are good women, there are not so good women. And this is also subject to change. People do change. It's very long-winded, it's hard, it's not always going to happen. Some people claim to have changed and haven't, but people can change. So when you're talking about the divine masculine, I would go to a divine masculine who you can resonate with. So I would probably avoid the Greek pantheon, to be honest. Although Hades isn't like that. Hades, by the way, Hades is not like that, but because he will get in my astral and shout at me if I don't say that. Hi, Freefaller. But if you work with a divine masculine who you feel comfortable with the stories from, maybe that might be a good place to start. I honestly feel like Coronanos is a really great masculine energy to start with. He's very much associated with animal energy and hunt energy. He's very, very masculine in terms of sensuality and things, but he's also very grounded in the earth and the earth-based work and forests and woodlands and trees and things like that. So I honestly feel that might be a good place for you to start. Or you could work with someone, I mean, I'm not going to suggest Loki, but like a shapeshifter energy might work really well for you too. So Michael says that Kuranos is very gentle as well, and Denise loves him. So there you go. Loki has been incredibly healing when learning to accept the masculine energy for Miss Gremlin. So there you go. I only don't recommend Loki because he can be a bit chaotic. That is something to bear in mind. He likes to throw everything on his head and play with everything, but you know, I don't discourage anybody from working with Loki. He's awesome. I just like as a beginning energy, like the very first time you work with a masculine energy, you maybe a softly, you know. Yeah, Denise, Loki is the obnoxious brother who can't leave me alone. Yeah, I can see that. And Kronos has been calling, so I've been seeing a lot of stags. Well, there you go. There you go. And follow that intuition. I think that's a good place to start. Estrella says, I have worked with Hades and I loved it. He was wonderful. I'm now dedicated to Kronos and the Morrigan. I couldn't be happier. So there you go. There you go. And Mary says, Kronos was the first pagan deity that called me. And Maharat says, nothing wrong with a bit of chaos. No, I agree. But when it's your first venture into the divine masculine, you might want to go softly with that one. Cool. Are there any more questions before we wrap up? The chat's been off the chart. I didn't expect this at all with me just dropping in on everybody. Thank you so much. Cool beans. Cool beans. Okay, I think we're at a good point then. So thank you guys for joining me. It was really, really amazing that you guys came and had a chat with me, and I hope those have helped people that have asked questions. I hope that's helped a little bit. Who knows? Maybe. Loki's going to be turning my house upside down now, just so you guys know. How dare you say I'm not a starting god? Throws things across the, No, I'm kidding. Well, half kidding. He might. Anyway, so thank you guys so much for joining me. This was fun, and I'm glad that it was fun, because the whole YouTube thing has been a bit difficult of late. So this is cool. So I'll see you again, guys, soon. Yeah, I will do. I'm trying to get back into doing lives and things, but I was like, what do I want to talk about? What matters? And then going from that point. So thank you guys so much, and I'll see you soon.